So the final bit of the introductory session for today is going to be by myself. And we really just want to wrap up the EU Green Deal part and bring in a little bit of a South African perspective before we take the tea break. I think the first important point that we want to make is that as the industry association, we are convinced that having a regulatory process is non-negotiable. We cannot allow our products to be entering markets without some form of regulation. However, we do need a regulatory process that takes into account the impact of our products, that would ensure the health of the consumer, ensure the health of persons who are handling our products, and of course ensuring the health of the environment. These components are absolutely critical to any regulatory process. As we said in the beginning as well, the European Union is well within its rights to set new laws and new standards for its own citizens, but certainly they need to take into account other role players and trading partners and what is required in other countries around the world in terms of food production. So we've already heard from the speakers today that it's inevitable that there is going to be an impact on our local farmers and our local food production from the introduction of the EU Green Deal, its farm to fork strategy, and various other bits of legislation that are going to be supporting their strategy. It also seems very likely that import tolerances and straight out MRLs for certain products are going to go down to level of quantification or to be revoked altogether if that product is not currently registered and used in the European Union. It's not all doom and gloom. We heard from Tracy that there could very well be opportunities for increased trade as long as we can meet the new entry requirements. And the industry and CropLife is already fairly well advanced down the route. So we're using the example here of integrated pest management. You've all heard it from various training modules, from responsible use, from stewardship in general, that IPM is a very important part of the association and the industry's drive already to make our industry more sustainable. So as far as we're concerned, yes, there are risks coming. There can also be opportunities, but we're already fairly well down the route on coming up with mitigating circumstances. And just to remind you all, I'm not going to give you an IPM lecture, but just remember the CropLife position on IPM is only use the amount of product that you use when it's absolutely necessary, and you need to use as many different tools out of your toolbox as possible. In a nutshell, that is our position. There are local regulatory challenges, however. Let's not steer clear of that. And we believe this is going to exacerbate the problems of either losing products or having import tolerances and MRLs revoked on our local farmers. To bring a new plant protection solution to the South African market, some of you are going to beat me up at the tea break and said I can add another 3 years on this, but I've been fairly generous in saying we have to have multiple years of field trials in different geographic locations of our country to get the data that we can submit to the registrar. And then when it hits the registrar's office, as I said, optimistically, you've got to wait another 3 years before that new product is registered and you can start marketing and selling it. So we've got a double whammy here. We are potentially facing the loss of products from the market, and we are not getting the concurrent rapid introduction of new technologies and new tools for our farmers coming in. I also believe we need to be fair to our local regulators. They are trying to regulate an industry on one hand, and on the other hand, there is more and more pressure from outside the country, but also internal pressure from different groups. We have many groups out there who believe that we can still feed the world without pesticides. I don't think many of you in this room would share that impression, but we need to be fair to our registrar that the pressure that is coming from that side is immense. However, you've also heard from some other presenters this morning. We recognize that, but what we really request is that any regulator, not just our regulator, uses recognized and peer-reviewed data before they make decisions on which products need to be withdrawn from our local market and taken away from our farmers. We also hope that regulators are considering the socio-economic impact on our farmers, on our people, and on our food security before they decide to take tools away from our farmers. The EU Green Deal and also the aims and aspirations of our regulators to only have safe products on the market is very noble, but we certainly need local conditions to be taken into account. We have some unique crop pest combinations here that need unique molecules that might not be used elsewhere in the world. And we are also very much on the borderline in terms of food security. The Food Security Index gets published every year, and South Africa doesn't rank too highly at the moment. We are often victims of the vagaries of our climate. So we really need to be talking to our regulators and just reminding them that our unique crop pest combinations in this country need to be looked at in a different light. We cannot just bow to international or local pressure to remove certain molecules. Another concern that we have, and we have some of our members in the room today, is that the owners of new plant protection solutions are running a business. They have to decide where they're going to take their meager resources, where they're going to do trials, and where they're going to register products. And if we end up being a country that is not attractive in terms of the regulatory environment, we're not going to have new technologies being brought to this country. Now you add that on to the risk of losing molecules, losing MRLs, losing import tolerances. If we then don't have a source of new solutions coming in, again, just piling up against our farmers. So after the session's break, we're going to be taking a deeper dive into the local regulatory environment and other concerns that we have for our primary producers of food in our country. But I just want to leave you with the thoughts, as the industry association and our members, we don't just sit in the corner and complain that there's all these new regulations coming from Europe, everything's piling up against us. And one of the key areas I just want to talk to you briefly on is the activities of the Strategic Agricultural Inputs Forum. Those of you who know the local regulation, Act 36 of 1947, there are a number of other industry associations whose members are impacted by Act 36, such as the animal health, the animal feeds, the fertilizer producers, of course ourselves. Now the common thread with all of us, as I said, is we have to operate under Act 36. Getting a registration under Act 36 is our right to operate. No registration, no sales. So we collectively came together in a loose forum, and I'm very pleased to say that through multiple efforts over the last few months, 6 weeks ago, we signed with the DG of Delrad, DG Ramasodi. We signed the so-called gap analysis. This was a lot of work that was done to sit with the registrar's office, understand where bottlenecks are, understand where resources are required, because you need a baseline. If you want to improve something, you've got to have that baseline. So that work has been accepted, signed off by the DG, and this opens the doors for us now to talk with the registrar and Delrad on how we're going to improve the regulatory process, particularly in our interest for plant protection solutions in South Africa. We still got a long way to go, but we do thank and we recognize Delrad's willingness to work with us so that we can improve the regulatory process. I must be honest, this is not going to be an overnight solution, whereas the EU Green Deal and potential negative impact is looming. So we do need to consider that as a potential risk.